Welcome to Kermode Uncut. There's a new movie out this week called The Water Diviner, which is directed by and starring Russell Crowe. You probably know Russell Crowe recorded an interview for the radio show I do with Simon Mayo. He just did the interview with Simon Mayo this time. The last time he came on the show, we both did an interview with Russell Crowe. One point in that interview, he mistook me for Gavin Martin from the NME, with whom he'd had a run-in of one of his earlier films decades ago. And there was a rather awkward moment because Russell Crowe is a man who wears his passions on his sleeve. You'll remember the famous story about when he won a BAFTA and his speech was cut and he had words with the producer of the show for trimming down his speech. But he's an interesting form. I have to say, not one of my favourite actors. You think of all the things for which he's really famous. Gladiator, of course, for which he won the Oscar. Not one of my favourite movies. Beautiful Mind, again, I think he was to some extent acted off the screen in that film by Paul Bettany. However, there are some great Russell Crowe performances in his back catalogue. They're not necessarily the ones that everyone else would choose. So I thought, here's a good time to give you my top 5 Russell Crowe performances. And at number 5, Noah. Now you may remember some time ago I did a blog in Los Angeles when they just put out the posters for Noah, and I said, look, it looks like it's going to be Gladiator in the rain, and in many ways it is, except for my money it's a much better movie than Gladiator. Why? Well, largely because it's completely bonkers. Russell Crowe basically plays Noah as somebody who almost turns into a serial killer. It is a crazed performance, a crack performance. It has none of that cod heroism of Gladiator. It's mad. It's a film which puts great big boulder-like transformer rock monsters into a strange and weird little passage from the Bible. And at the centre of it all is Russell Crowe, chewing up the screen and then some. At number 4, not a starring role, but a very significant supporting role as Bud White in Curtis Hanson's LA Confidential. It's a film which really stands the test of time. You look at all those kind of crime thrillers which came after it, and so many of them are influenced by that already retro feel of Curtis Hanson's movie. And as a supporting player, Russell Crowe finds his own space in the screen. It's not a showy performance. It's not one of those Russell Crowe, I have to take centre stage performances, and that's what I like about it. It's nuanced, it's subtle, it's actually rather good. Which brings us on to number 3. Now, I mentioned at the top of this piece that one of the films for which Russell Crowe was Oscar nominated was A Beautiful Mind, in which I said he was acted off the screen by Paul Bettany. Well, funnily enough, I think he's acted off the screen again by Paul Bettany in Master and Commander. But I think Russell Crowe is terrific in that film. It's got a wonderful painterly vision. And yes, Paul Bettany absolutely captures the attention. But Russell Crowe, as the eponymous Master and Commander, does give you the sense of somebody who does genuinely have seafaring bones. It's a rich film, a film which is textural, a film which has real density and complexity, and I think Russell Crowe is completely up to the challenge. Which brings me to number 2, and that run-in with the New Musical Express. Very early on in his career, Russell Crowe played Hando, the Nazi skinhead, in the quite extraordinary film Romper Stomper. Now, Romper Stomper annoyed a lot of people. When it opened here in the UK, it played at the Prince Charles, and there were pickets outside the screenings. Although I later found out that some of those pickets may have been whipped up by the distributors. Whatever, it was a controversial film because people worried about the way in which it depicted right-wing skinheads, and at the centre of it is an absolutely electrifying performance by Russell Crowe. Crowe objected to the way the New Musical Express took objection to that film. I actually rather like it, although, like Clockwork Orange, it's kind of confused about exactly where its morality lies. It just tears off the screen, and you can see why some people would misread it. Now, all of those performances are variously interesting, but at the top of my list of the top 5 Russell Crowe performances of all time, I've chosen a Michael Mann film, The Insider, based on a true story in which Russell Crowe plays Jeffrey Wiegand. It's a story about the tobacco industry, about information about the tobacco industry coming out in strange and twisted ways, and at the centre of it is this very set-upon character, Jeffrey Wiegand. What I really like about Russell Crowe's performance is that he's quite a macho performer, he's quite a big guy, he plays a lot of rough, tough roles, but in The Insider, he literally seems to shrink into his suit. He becomes a little man, a scared man, a worried man. He becomes somebody who you can see getting smaller and smaller on screen. It's really impressive because there's no vanity in the performance at all. In fact, quite the opposite of that. It's a performance in which he has given himself over entirely to the role. I really love that film, partly because I love what it says about the tobacco industry, but partly because it has the best performance that I've ever seen from Russell Crowe on screen. So there we are, my top 5 Russell Crowe performances. I said at the beginning that I wasn't a huge fan of his acting, but actually looking at that list, maybe I'm more of a fan than I thought. What about you? What have I left out? Are you one of the people who was really seduced by A Good Year? I hope not. Or maybe you think I should have had 3:10 to Yuma, which actually is a pretty terrific film. What are your favourite Russell Crowe performances? Let me know.